Good morning and welcome to the Pondering Show here on WKUR-FM, your country road. I'm your host, Doug Ponder, and I'm joining you live here at the Don Franklin Chevy Buick GMC studios here in Renfro Valley, Kentucky. Now, it's been a wild week here in Rockcastle County, and the rest of the state for that matter. We've had heavy rains, severe thunderstorms, high winds, hail, polar vortexes, tsunamis. Well, that's what you'd think if you watched one of the local TV news station's 6-hour broadcast about one single storm. But in all seriousness, though, we've had some bad storms in our area with a lot of hail and high winds and bad weather. But some people in our area even spotted funnel clouds on Tuesday. Now, I carry a scanner around for work all the time, but I also use it for entertainment purposes as well. And not because I'm nosy, which I have to admit I am, but also because it's entertaining to hear some of the dumb stuff people call 911 to report about. Now, someone in our county called 911 on Tuesday saying they saw a funnel cloud in the sky above their house. Yeah. Now, I have all the respect in the world for our first responders. I really do. But I don't think even they can stop a funnel cloud or tornado from happening. Now, calling 911 to report a funnel cloud is not the same as calling 911 to report a robbery or a house fire. The fire department can't stop the funnel cloud or tornado by hosing it down with water, and a police officer can't arrest them and throw them in jail either. But that's not even the most bizarre thing that someone has done during the storms these past week. Now, we all watch the news on TV during severe storms, and, God bless them for what they do, because they actually do save lives when they tell us to take shelter during bad storms. But is it just me, or are they getting a little bit carried away with their weather reporting lately? Now, because they actually call days now with stormy weather, they call them severe weather days. Now, when there is a severe weather day, there's a cute little logo on the corner of the TV screen, and the TV news stations sign on and sign off with their call letters followed by a severe weather day. It's like a national holiday every time we have a storm now, and it won't be long before Walmart picks up on this and creates a severe weather day section like they do for Halloween and Christmas. Now, I know a lot of you are asking what in the world they could possibly sell in this severe weather day section other than flashlights and batteries and normal stuff like that. But, believe it or not, there's actually a lot of stuff they can sell. And one of the possible hot items comes from one of the most hilarious comments I heard a meteorologist make a few weeks ago during that other round of bad storms we had. And I think they were referring to Monticello or somewhere in southern Kentucky. And this meteorologist told the people in that area where there was a tornado warning to take shelter, stay away from doors and windows, and put on a bicycle or football helmet. Now, I'm all about safety during storms. I really am. But is a bicycle helmet or football helmet really necessary? When I was a kid, I was taught to get into the fetal position and put my hands over my head. I remember missing class for that with those drills. But these meteorologists are dead serious about putting on a helmet, and they want everybody to put on a helmet. Now, here is where Walmart comes into play, where they can make buttloads of money off of selling these helmets in their severe weather day section. They can have logos and emblems for the helmets, and kids can sticker them up, and girls can bedazzle their helmets with lightning strike stickers and tornado stickers and funnel cloud stickers, and they can even make a more expensive line of helmets with a built-in Wi-Fi mobile hotspot in case the internet goes out at home during the storms. Because the kids got to have something to do when the internet goes out. We can't have them being bored during these storms. But, you know what my first question was when I heard someone tell me to put on a helmet and these meteorologists tell you to do that? If we have to wear helmets in Kentucky, then the meteorologists in the plain states like Oklahoma and Kansas need to tell people to wear football shoulder pads with their helmets. Well, as a matter of fact, they just need to tell people to bubble wrap themselves out there. But the rain has moved out in the county, and the severe storms have gone away, and we have a great show lined up for you this morning. Now, with all the news surrounding Robin Williams' death, we'll be talking and addressing tough questions about depression and suicide. And you won't want to miss this show, so don't go away. And welcome back to the Pondering Show here in WKUR-FM, your country road. Now, we are joining you live from the Don Franklin Studios at Chevy Buick GMC. And we're going to go ahead and just get right into our topic here. With Robin Williams' recent death, his suicide has caused a barrage of talk and differing views about people, suffering from depression and suicide and mental illnesses. Now, there are people who have verbally attacked Williams for committing suicide, and most notably those people are popular radio show host Henry Rollins, who said he doesn't feel bad for Williams or take him serious anymore because he said Williams made his own choice and he blew it. And then Fox News host Shepard Smith also called Williams a coward on TV. Now, on the other side of the spectrum of that, there was people who are more sympathetic to the issue instead of attacking, and that one of those was well-known blogger Tom Clemson, who said Williams died from depression, not suicide. Then he went on to say that suicide is a symptom of depression, and depression is an illness, not a choice of lifestyle. So with all the buzz surrounding the issue, we're going to dig deep into some questions about depression, mental illness, and suicide in order to give us more accurate explanations. Then we'll discuss how to find help and hope to prevent these things from taking over your life and the lives of those you love and care about. And also throughout the show, feel free to call in with your comments, and our number is 606-256-0949. And after we are done, we'll be taking questions, and if we run out of time with the show, we'll still talk to you and take your questions afterwards as well. Now, our guest for this issue was an outpatient counselor who is now a psychology professor at Somerset Community College, Mr. Mark Isham. Thanks for coming in, and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, and now we're just going to go ahead and jump right into things. And to start things off, what is the textbook definition of depression in psychology, and what is the difference between being depressed and simply being down or sad?
Well, I brought in my psychology, not actually textbook, but any psychologist or counselor, mental health professional is going to have what's called the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Big old thick book with just about any mental health diagnosis that you can include, and one of them, of course, is major depressive disorder, and it's a big, long definition. I don't want to read, unless you just want me to read the whole thing. It's a long definition, but it's included in here. So when a person is feeling depressed, if they go to a medical professional, a mental health professional, we could look in here, and there's a laundry list of 9+ symptoms, with the first one being just simply feeling depressed. I come in, I say, gee, I'm feeling down, I'm feeling depressed, and it goes on from there and lists a change in behavior, a change in sleep patterns, a change in appetite, all of that type of stuff.
So it just kind of pinpoints people, and people can look at these 9 things and say, hey, I got 4 or 5 of these, and and just kind of gauge it from there on how they can find the help and just go from there.
And you really can. You said, what's the difference in being depressed and being down or sad? Basically, it's the level. If something happens to me, the weather, it's a little bit gloomy and cloudy, and maybe I wake up this morning, I feel like I'm just, the weather's kind of getting me down. I was looking forward to a sunny day. I was going to go do something, but now it's gloomy, and so I'm just kind of down. If that lasts for today and maybe tomorrow, then that's down, that's gloomy, and there are actually other labels for those. There's what we might call an adjustment disorder, various things. But if I go for 2 weeks or more and I'm feeling very down and I can't snap out of it, and my sleep habits change, I call in sick to work because I just don't feel like going in, that's when we start to consider that maybe it's clinical depression.
I see. And now, see, that's also the Doug Ponder version of depression. I tell people this all the time. If you go, and you mentioned that, to extended period of time, more than a day or two, if you go for a week or 2 or months even, and not even wanting to get out of bed, nothing, it's just all gloomy, and that's kind of the Doug Ponder version. But anyway, there's more to it than that, of course. But now, is depression different for every person, and are there different levels of depression, kind of based off what you mentioned with those 9 things? Like, what are those levels?
Oh my gosh, depression is different for different people. That what might trigger depression in you might not trigger depression in me. What might trigger depression in me might not for you. And yeah, I was saying that there are loads. When I teach my general psychology classes, and I always talk to my students about, I've never actually sat down and counted them, but there are probably 5 or 6 different levels of depression. There's what I said a minute ago called an adjustment disorder, which means something's happened and I'm just having a hard time adjusting to it, but it's not considered severe depression. Then there's severe depression, and again, I could go into all the different, there's mild severe depression, there's moderate severe depression, there's mild clinical depression, moderate clinical depression, and severe clinical depression. There's recurrent depression, which means it might go away, but then it comes back again. There's single episode, which means maybe I have it for a few weeks, a couple of months, it goes away, and for most of the rest of my life, I feel okay. So there are different levels levels as we move up the criteria for depression.
So that's right, because it's just more than simply saying you're depressed or not. It's so much more to it. Okay. Well, now, and another thing is, some people don't tell other people about their depression. They try to hide it, and then some may not even know they're depressed. They just might be wondering why they're feeling the way they're feeling. So how can you tell if someone is depressed, and how can you distinguish yourself if you are depressed instead of down or sad?
Sometimes when I was an outpatient counselor, that would happen to me. I would have people come into my office and say, I don't think I'm depressed, but I don't know if I am. I might hear, well, my wife sees me and she says I'm depressed. My coworkers keep saying I'm depressed, but I don't feel depressed. And that was always an interesting concept to me, that somebody could actually be depressed, but not know that I'm depressed, not actually feel depressed. There is, and I always tell people, you can go online and find this. It's out there. It's everywhere. It's free. There are dozens of websites that have what's called the Beck Depression Inventory. You take the Beck Depression Inventory. It's, I don't remember now, 10, 15 questions. If you answer them honestly, the way that you were feeling, it'll give you a good idea whether maybe I'm just a little bit down, maybe I'm experiencing depression, maybe it's severe depression, and you can use that as a jumping point.
Oh, great. So people can just Google that, and it's just a free thing they can do. Okay. Good. Okay. So now here's the other big discussion that William's death's also brought on. Now, can depression actually be categorized as a mental illness, and is it something people can avoid, like a bad lifestyle or just simply a choice lifestyle that they're doing, or is it actually an illness that needs to be treated?
Well, it is an illness that needs to be treated. There are lifestyle elements to it, and when I start talking this way, I want to be really careful to clarify. You made the comment, is it a choice? Certainly it is not a choice, and it is not a lifestyle. A lot of times I would hear people talk about Robin Williams, and one of the big comments that I would hear over and over is, he had such a great life, he was rich, he was famous, this and that. Why did he, how could he be depressed? What did he have to be depressed about? It's not a lifestyle choice. It is an illness. But like with a lot of other illnesses, and I just jotted down really quickly, diabetes, heart disease, various other illnesses. If I've got heart disease, maybe I'm genetically predisposed for heart disease. Maybe it comes in my family. But there's a responsibility that I have to eat right, to exercise. I can't just say, well, I've got heart disease, there's nothing I can do about it, and go on with my life. The same thing with depression. If I have a genetic predisposition to depression, and this is a personal thing, as different counselors will say different things. From my perspective, I think there is a genetic element to depression, but just because your mom or your dad was depressed doesn't automatically mean that you were going to be depressed. Exactly. But maybe I'm prone to depression. Maybe that's in my genetics. Maybe that's in my lifestyle. I can choose get enough sleep. I can choose, and of course, sometimes we don't choose getting enough sleep, but if I can try to get enough sleep, I can stay away from alcohol, which is a depressant. I can stay away from certain things that are going to cause me stress. I can monitor that in myself. Gee, I'm starting to feel down today. I need to do something to take better care of myself so this doesn't go into depression. So just like diabetes, just like heart disease, just like a lot of other things, maybe it's in my genetic makeup, but I can avoid it with the things that I do.
Yeah, that's right. With the choices you make and the things you do to better yourself or whatever. Okay. Well, we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we're going to look at when the point comes when depression turns into suicidal thoughts. So stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the Pondering Show here on WKUR-FM. Now, Mark Isham is with us in the Don Franklin Chevy Buick GMC studio, and we are addressing areas of depression and suicide that often gets overlooked on other talk shows. So, Mark, we've hashed out what the details of depression are, and at what point does depression turn into suicidal thoughts or somebody possibly committing suicide?
The two big words, and again, I was jotting notes as we were talking, the two big words that I hear over and over again when depression becomes thoughts of suicide: hopelessness and helplessness. If I'm sitting in my life, if I'm, it's a Saturday morning and I'm looking at things and I feel like, well, I'm down today, but things are better. Work is going well. My relationships are going well. My finances are going well. There is a way out of this, that I'm probably going to be okay. But if I get to a point, and again, we keep talking about Robin Williams, who knows what was going through his mind that last day. But if I get to a point in my life where I think this is always going to be this way, I cannot find a way out of this depression. One of my professors when I was in college talked about the depressive triad. When I get so depressed and I feel like I'm depressed now, I've always been depressed, and I always will be depressed. The three big ones. Now, of course, I haven't always been depressed, and I won't always be depressed, but it feels like it. And when I look to my future, and I look a week from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, and I think I'm always going to feel this way, that's when we need to be concerned about suicide, because then if I'm always going to feel this way, then what else is there?
Exactly. And I think you hit the point there. And this is what depression does to people. It makes people think that you're the only one in the boat. When in all reality, there's a lot of people out there feeling the same exact thing, or even worse than what you're feeling. But it just kind of makes you narrow down. Everybody else you see is happy, and everybody else is great, and it makes you think that you're never going to get out of it. That's depression. And here's the other kicker, and I know a lot of people are thinking about this right now. Okay, say someone close to you. I mean, can people usually spot when people have suicidal thoughts or are getting depressed? That way they can kind of intervene and get help for those people?
The quick answer to that is yes, that we can spot it. But I always tell people that if you have a loved one who is depressed, if you have a loved one who is suicidal, don't put that on it's not your responsibility. Now, but at the same time, and I'm walking a really thin line here, because it is nice to intervene. It is nice to talk to the person, but sometimes we get ourselves so down that I should have done this. I wish I had said that. Yeah, it's great to intervene and say, gee, Doug, I noticed lately you've seemed down. Is everything all right? Do you want to talk about it? I always tell people the best way to tell if a person is suicidal is to simply ask them, are you feeling suicidal? And I know that's a big thing. So don't ask. You don't want to bring that up. Well, the thing is, here I am, and if I'm feeling suicidal, I'm not going to hide it. We have this idea that this person is down, they're suicidal, and they're determined now. They're dead set to commit suicide. They're going to follow through with the act. So don't talk to them about it. That's completely not true. That's the opposite of what it is. You're depressed. I come to you and I say, Doug, are you depressed? And you're likely to say, yeah, I really am. And then I say, have you been thinking about suicide? And you're like, yeah, I have been thinking about suicide. Because when a person gets depressed, when a person gets suicidal, they don't want to die. It's not like I've decided I want to die. I don't want to die. But I'm looking ahead thinking, I don't see anything else left to live for. What I want is a big change in my life. I'm down. I'm feeling depressed. Maybe work is going poorly. Maybe my marriage is going poorly. And I want something to change. I don't want to die, but that's the only thing I can think of doing. So if somebody comes to me and says, do you want to talk about it? Are you feeling suicidal? Are there things that you've been thinking? Then I'm more than happy to say, yeah, let me talk about it. Let me tell you about it. And a lot of times we take our hands off and say, he's really down. He's really depressed. Just don't talk to him. Don't touch him, And that's not.
That's not. And I know because you posted something on your Facebook that said people don't want to die, they just want the pain to go away. I remember you posting that.
Yep.
Yeah. And we're going to kind of veer off from that topic for a second. But now, is there other examples of why people have suicidal thoughts or commit suicide other than depression, or is it just only depression?
Well, no, it is not just only depression, and I'm certain there are millions of reasons why people commit suicide. I'm thinking of people. Okay, depression is definitely one. Maybe I've got a terminal illness, and before I go on, I want to emphasize and underline that I am not saying that there is ever a good reason for suicide. When I was a counselor, that was something that I learned, is that, again, going back to what I said a minute ago, if there's hope, if I can look ahead and say I've got something going on next week or next month or next year that I'm looking forward to, but at the same time, I've heard people talk about suicide for depression, for terminal illness, for financial problems, for various other things like that. There are loads of reasons. Every person is an individual, and every person who thinks about suicide has got their own reasons.
That's exactly right. It's not something you can even categorize. Yeah. You can try to, but there's exceptions, and people go through so much different stuff, but it's never the answer. Like you said, it's never the answer. What do you think of the people who attacked Williams and attacked people who commit or have suicidal thoughts, label them as weak and cowardly and things like that? Is that accurate to say that they're that way?
No, a person who commits suicide, a person who attempts suicide, even if a person is not suicidal and is simply very, very, very depressed, that person is not weak. That person is not cowardly. I know it's a jump to judgment with a lot of people that, oh, you're so depressed. What have you done? Snap out of it, or that type of stuff. And I think in situations like that, it's with a lot of things. we as people get really uncomfortable with things that we don't understand. And so if you've got a problem, you've got something going on, and I don't know what it is, I don't understand it, it's not my life, so I'm really quick to say, well, that's your problem, you need to deal with that, you're weak, you're cowardly, just snap out of it, what's wrong with you? But no, it is not weak, it is not cowardly. And you say, what is my opinion of the people that say that? My opinion is the people that will say that will go on television or radio or just in public and say Robin Williams or whoever was weak, was cowardly, that person just doesn't quite understand. That person, I'm not going to say what's going on in that other person's life, but I will say that they just don't know what's going on in Robin Williams' life or what's going on in your life or mine.
Yeah, and that's right, and it's still continuing to unravel. We're learning about the Parkinson's disease and all that stuff, and so on the other hand, when people are claiming that Williams, and you've touched on this, died from depression and not suicide, and they list that as kind of like suicide's like a symptom, is that accurate?
I think it is. And again, when I step out onto a line like this, I need to be really careful because everybody's got their own opinion. I think depression is a mental illness. Depression is treatable. Depression is conquerable. Just because a person is depressed doesn't mean that they will end up suicidal. That's, in fact, you were asking at the beginning of the show about the symptoms of depression, and one of these, and I'll just read it right out of the book that I like, is, let me see if I can find it here. One of the symptoms of depression is recurrent thoughts of death, recurrent suicidal ideation without a specific plan, and then it goes on and says possible suicide attempt, but it says that the first one is recurrent thoughts of death. If I'm suicidal, maybe I'm just thinking about death. Maybe I'm thinking about, life is useless, life is hopeless, but maybe I'm not actually thinking about committing suicide. I'm just thinking about what's the point? We're all going to die anyway. So no, just because a person is depressed does not automatically mean that person will end up suicidal.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, exactly. Okay. And we're going to take another quick break real quick. Now, when we come back, we've hashed out the what's depression, and we've hashed out the whole suicide issue. Now we're going to come back to looking at how people can specifically look at how people can seek help and prove that there is hope. There is hope. So join us back. All right, welcome back to the Pondering Show here on WKUR-FM, your country road. And we left off on the issue of how people can find help and if they are depressed or have suicidal thoughts. So, in the psychology world, what is the overall response from, surrounding Williams' death, and what do you personally want to see? And I'll be able to speak on this, that they want to see more funding for mental illnesses and more focus on how people can be helped. Is that something that you want to see too?
I think that would be great. I don't know what, you said in the psychology world, that's all right. That's all right. I don't know what a lot of people are thinking. I know, having been, I've been working as a counselor for over 20 years now. And Robin Williams, suicide in general, overall, there is, and I'm trying to think of how to word this. Human life is valuable. And it is always, always a tragedy when a human life is gone, especially when somebody ends their own life. And you were talking about how should we, do we need more funding? Or I don't know. What I know is that I worked as an outpatient counselor for 18 years, and it felt like they were always kind of retooling and retweaking the system to try to get people to make mental health treatment more accessible, to make emergency services more accessible. I know a clinic where I worked, 10, 12 years ago had, while I was working at the company, while I was working at the agency, they opened a very, very, very nice emergency crisis unit. I described it. It was like a motel. You go to a motel and there are nice beds, and there's everything is nice and pretty, and there's a television room and a game room and all that type of stuff. And that was when there were people who were actively suicidal. A person would call the doctor, a person would call the police, or whatever. They were feeling actively suicidal. The people were brought into this emergency crisis unit, and they'd stay one night there, 2-3 nights there, and they would be taken care of, treated very, very well. I think there needs to be more of that. I think in some situations, and again, I can't speak for everybody, I think some people are confused, some people are frightened, some people are intimidated by just the whole concept of mental illness. So we don't know what to do with it. But yeah, I'm all for more funding, more availability, more intervention.
Yeah. Exactly, and it's needed. Like you said, now I had no idea that there was such a place like that where it's kind of like you said, a hotel where people can go.
Great.
You know, that'd be great because it's like I said, people when we describe depression, people lose that hope and they're just looking for help, and I think that's another. And they might not say it themselves, or like I said, they might feel intimidated, or what do people think of me, and stuff like that. But they're just looking for help, and if there's some ways where we can kind of spot that more, like we were talking about, that's great. So. Now, what do you suggest for people who are depressed, and for whatever reason that may be, whatever kind of reasons, and at what stage do people need to urge their depressed loved ones to seek help or try to intervene like we were talking about? What stage would that be?
Oh, what stage? Gosh, again, like I was saying a minute ago, depression is like, so many other things. What I've learned about just people in general over the years is when we've got something wrong with us, we don't like to talk about it. If I've got diabetes, if I've got heart disease, if I've got whatever, I don't want to come in here and say, I'm really worried about my diabetes, I'm really worried about my heart disease. People tend to try to keep it to themselves, like I'm strong and I can handle this and I can deal with it. And when people begin feeling depressed, maybe a person is going through life and they start to realize they're just not enjoying things as much as they used to. It's harder to get out of bed. Life isn't as much fun. They don't spend as much time with their friends, and that person might begin to feel like maybe I'm getting depressed. And again, I've said this already, but I'll repeat it, which is I don't want to admit that to myself, because if I'm getting depressed, there's something wrong with me, and there's but if I feel that happening, I might want to go online and take that back depression inventory. I think it's a great tool. I might want to talk to, if I've got a husband or a wife, if I've got a close friend, a coworker, a brother or sister, and I might start talking about it. And you said then when we see our loved ones experiencing that, if I see a loved one who just isn't quite the same person they used to be,
and that's easy to spot.
It is easy to spot. Talk to that person. You can't force a person to get treatment. You can't force a person to go to counseling. You can't force a person to take medicine or go to the hospital or whatever it is they need to do. But you can go out there and say, whatever's going on, I'm here. I'll respect you. I'll keep our conversations private. I'm not going to talk this around, but it seems like something's going on. Do you want to talk about it? Maybe I can't cure you, but I can listen to you. And together we can find every county in the United States, every single county from Hawaii to Alaska to New York to Florida to Kentucky, every county in the United States legally is supposed to have access to affordable mental health treatment. Rockcastle County has it, Laurel County has it, Pulaski County, we've all got it. There are affordable mental health treatment centers all over the country. Look up in the phone book, in the yellow pages, online. I'm old school, right? Look in the yellow pages. Yeah. Google it, and there are places around here that you can call, and they will take you. Even if you can't pay, they'll take you, to treat you, because everybody's supposed to.
Or they'll at least offer you ways where you can get it to it. That they'll know more. And I think you nailed this too when you mentioned this earlier. When people are depressed and their friends or somebody can tell that something's wrong, they're not acting the way they used to act, and it's not that this depressed person is looking for help from their friend. I think it's more of a thing that they're just glad to see somebody cares about them, and they're glad to see that somebody's fighting for them to find them help, and on their side. And I think that's a big, huge step. So I think a lot of people, that have people that are depressed or maybe having suicidal thoughts, they think, well, the family member or friend, they see them doing that, they think, well, I can't help them. I'm not a professional and stuff. But, in a lot of ways, they just want to see somebody cares, and they're wanting somebody to help them get to that point.
And not to, and it's easy to do, but not to be judgmental, not to throw out these things of, what do you have to be depressed about? Look at your life. Look at me. I'm not depressed. We don't want to hear things like that. We want somebody to listen and say, gee, that sounds really bad. What can I do to help? Do you want to talk more about it? That type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And we have some time here. And because, see, the first time I ever was depressed in my entire life, like actually legit depressed, was when my dad was killed in an electrical accident. And I was 10 years old. And, I remember, and the whole feeling of you feel like you're the only person in the boat. All my friends, they had both their mom and dad, and it was just, when I go stay all night with them, they had that. And I used to have that, and I knew in my mind, talking about losing the hope, I knew in my mind I could never have that mother and dad, in the home again, that was like a done thing for me, and that losing a feeling of hope. and I'd see my friends and stuff, and it makes you feel like you're the only person in the boat. And when all reality, there's people that's lost both parents in car wrecks, or there's people that's parents gone through divorces, and they're and there's all kinds of. But at that point, it's like it makes you feel like you're the only person feeling that way. And I remember you're talking about not to be judgmental. I remember it wasn't too long after my dad had died, and somebody come up to me and said that. They were like, well, so-and-so, and I don't remember who it was now, lost both their parents in a car wreck. It was that specific thing. You shouldn't feel the way you're feeling. And that just kind of totally, but that's how I hear a lot of people doing that. Like if I know this one girl just lost her grandma. She's in elementary school, or is her grandpa, I'm sorry. And, and like people are already thinking that, well, you're lucky you still have your parents. You're lucky you still have your other set of grandparents. It's not a competition. But people some people try to make it that way, but it's not. I just think we just need to focus more on being sympathetic to people. And, when people's lives change, when they lose loved ones, when they're battling drug addictions, when, they're going through divorces and their lives have totally changed, they need people, friends there to help them to get to that point, and that's what I see happening, and not to be judgmental.
Right.
Well, all right, so we talked about now where you can get this help at, and like you said, there's help in every county. So what do you suggest for other people who are having even worse, those suicidal thoughts, or for whatever reason, and for loved ones who are seeing theirs? Is there different centers from the depression or are they all the same? Help, or how does that work?
Okay, and see, this is where I wish I'd gotten actually some numbers that I could pass along. And I keep saying, look in the yellow pages or look online. I think that the agency here in Rockcastle County is called Cumberland River Comprehensive Care. Okay. I think that's right. Almost any place, and again, I'm not speaking for Cumberland River Comprehensive Care. I have worked for Adonta, which is in Somerset. I worked for Bluegrass Mental Health, which is based out of Lexington. And as I said, they're all over the country. They're called different things. And most of those agencies will have a special, what they call the emergency hotline, the emergency helpline, whatever. And they are answered by a real person 24 hours a day. 2:30 in the morning, you're awake, you can't sleep, you're feeling down, you're feeling depressed, call the number, whatever the number is, and there will be somebody there. And I was talking a minute ago about the emergency unit that I worked at, which was just a wonderful place. Wonderful place to work, wonderful coworkers, wonderful services. I was glad to be a part of that. And that was the sort of place, like I said, it had a television room, it had a game room, it had individual units. I think in the media, movies and stuff, we sensationalize these cold, bare walls with that type of stuff. It was not like that at all. It was a very comfortable, comforting place to be, and people would come in any hour of the day and night. When I worked there, I was the late shift. I was 11 at night to 7 in the morning, and it was very, very common, not every single morning, but pretty common at 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, somebody to come in and say, I'm really down, I'm really depressed, I need a place to stay, and we'd be fine with that.
Well, and also too, and it's come to my mind, but when they're at those groups, like you said, that hotel room, they can probably feed off each other and help each other, because it's neat it's good to have somebody that can relate to you or who has experienced the same things you've experienced, and that's probably another asset to that, isn't it?
Because they're not going to be judged.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you've been through it already. You know what to say and what not to say.
You know where they're coming from. Yeah, you know where they're coming from. Okay, and now we're going to kind of wrap things up here. Now, what is your last final advice for people who are depressed or suffering from mental illnesses of all kinds or having suicidal thoughts? What?
Going back to what I said a couple of minutes ago, when I said the two key words were helplessness and hopelessness. When I was a counselor, a lot of times I would talk with people who were depressed or experiencing any mental illness, and I would ask them, how do you feel right now? And typically I feel terrible, I feel horrible. Okay, how do you think you'll feel in a day? How do you think you'll feel in a week? And the idea that there is something out there. There's something out there for all of us. I've got 2 children. My daughter just graduated from high school. My son will be graduating in 2 years. My daughter's in college. All of us have something little, something big that we can say, oh yeah, a year from now I'm looking forward to this. 6 months from now I'm looking forward to that. And to look and focus on, yes, you do feel bad right now, and that's fine. Yep. That's legitimate. That's acceptable. But there are things in the future, and don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed to talk to your medical doctor about it. Just go to your doctor and say, I'm feeling really down. And maybe your medical doctor can refer you to a counselor, can prescribe antidepressants, or go ahead and make that appointment at your mental health clinic. But know that there is something in the future that you need to be there for.
Exactly. Okay. Well, it looks like we're getting close to being out of time. We're going to take one more quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to take some calls if anybody's called in, and we're also going to recap the things that we've learned on today's Pondering Show. All right, welcome back to the Pondering Show here at the Don Franklin Chevy Buick GMC Studios, Renfro Valley. Now, we're going to recap the things we have learned today on the Pondering Show, and Mark Isham is here with us as he's thoroughly explained, the definitions of, depression and the different mental illness and how it's considered a mental illness and where you can seek help. And I think that's the biggest hot topic we can focus on is where you can seek help and to understand that there is help and hope instead of hopelessness and no help. So what's your final recap that week?
Oh gosh, my final recap. You know what? I think my final recap is kind of what I said right before the break, which is that when you start feeling it, again, it's human nature not to want to admit that there's something wrong with me. I keep comparing it to diabetes or to heart disease. If I've got heart disease, I can only go for so long with maybe chest pains or whatever until finally I say, I've got to see a doctor about this. And that's what I feel about mental illness, whether it's depression or any other mental illness, anxiety, any number of dozens of different mental illnesses. There's only so much that I can do. And finally, I just have to go and say, you know what? I'm going to see a doctor about this. I'm going to see a counselor about this. I'll take medication. I'll keep counseling appointments. If necessary, I'll go and spend a couple of nights in the hospital. So that's, you asked for my recap. I think my recap is monitor yourself. See the changes in yourself. If something's really changing, if something's really different, and you know it ain't quite right, and you don't like it, then go ahead and make that call, and don't be afraid, and don't be embarrassed.
Well, we're going to go ahead and end the show here, and thank you for listening to the Pondering Show, and join us back here next week at 11 a.m.